From investigating car bomb explosions to fighting flames, the ATF agents do it all.
Process the scene quickly, collect the evidence quickly.
The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive, known simply as ATF, is a federal law enforcement organization within the Department of Justice. And today, their national response team is at Redstone Arsenal doing annual training and practicing for any emergency explosive situation.
Bombing scenes, there's always potential life hazards of secondary devices.
And when the real call comes in, agents pick up and respond to scenes around the country.
It's critical that we arrive quickly, be able to secure the scene, and make it safe.
On the other side of the arsenal, ATF fire agents and investigators are training. Here at the ATF facility, we're talking all about house fires, how quickly they can spread, and why it's important to know the origin of the fire.
It teaches investigators the science behind the fire.
Flames rage inside a replica living room. Agents are demonstrating the destructive power of fires, teaching a group of attorneys hands-on just how quickly a house fire spreads and how the investigative process ties in.
Fire spread is a lot faster than it was decades ago.
This testing site behind me is almost unrecognizable. Officials say if they have any advice about fire, it's to sleep with the door closed. It'll stop the spread of the fire and toxic smoke. Putting the Valley first, I'm Sydney Stallworth, WZDX News.